I really appreciate everyone who joined early and on time. So we'll kick it off. We're recording this, so if people join in between, then we'll figure this out. So I am going to jump right in with a story, and I want you to bear with me and hold on. Um, it will work out. I want you to just put your trust in me for a couple minutes, and I want to take you on a little journey with me. So I hate getting dressed. I hate shopping. I hate everything about that. Part of the reason I love working from home is I only have to get dressed from here up. So I wanted AI to automate building outfits for me. And I want to take you on that journey to why last weekend I had my daughter helping me take pictures of my clothes to then automate getting dressed. So, where did this start? It started with simple curiosity of like, can AI help me get dressed? And it started very small. So I went back in my chat GPT history. This is a picture of me just asking like, hey, I kind of like my outfit. Is there any jewelry, right? So I'm doing low stakes, easy, clear success metrics, right? Do I like it or not? The recommendations. And then I kept trying different things. And then I started saying, like, okay, here's a couple shirts and pants. This is what I'm doing. Can you help me put together an outfit? So I started small, manageable, and had clear success. And so for this example, you'll see the answer was, that it actually could see that I had a very understated jewelry on, and then gave me some suggestions about how to improve it. So I start playing with it, I start testing, and then I'm like, can AI help me plan outfits for a conference based on my clothing now, rather than standing there in an outfit and helping me fix outfits and scarves and things? Can I like give it my clothes? And this was for Legal Week, I guess a little bit less than a year ago, last year. Can ChatGPT help me with this? And so this is more complex now, right? And I'm giving it more information. So I need to understand AI's capabilities and limitations. I'm testing what it can see. Like, can it see certain things? What style preferences does it have and understand? Does it understand my style preferences? Is it just giving generic advice that isn't helpful, or is it actually really useful? And then I said, okay, like, can you help me put together outfits if I take photos of the clothing? And ChatGPT was like, of course, let's just do it. And then I'm like, okay, I want to go to a legal conference. I need to pack, but I also want to be casual. I'm at a startup. I'm not a law firm lawyer. I don't wear suits. Don't want to wear suits. So then this is when I started adding variables. So it's winter in New York. So you can see they're not really great pictures. And this is literally me going on my journey. So I was like, I wear a lot of black because I live in Denmark and I also lived in New York. And I like gold accessories. So I uploaded a bunch of photos. I added context like weather, the conference schedule, formality, if I had any dinners, my preferences. So I was adding all these different variables and it was really helping me. So I use this solution, and then over time, I thought, am I always planning my outfits with AI? So is it really a dependency? Is it something that I'm not doing? Am I doing it now all the time? Well, I'm doing it now all the time, so I should probably like move away from the chat, right? It gets annoying to like constantly take pictures and have it help you plan. So now that I've recognized I have a pattern, I'm repeating, I need to then automate this. So part of this recognition was like noticing a shift in my behavior. Am I reaching for AI to help me get dressed? Has AI changed how I get dressed? It's definitely changed how I think about clothes because it's helped me put together outfits, which someone who went to private school most of my life, I never had to think about getting dressed. And it helped to identify this friction. Like I'm doing it over and over again. Okay, there has to be another way to move on. And so I think a lot of people are at that point with AI where I need to move on from the chat. And these things I'm doing over and over again, I need a workflow. I need to automate it. So then I started wondering, okay, what does the ideal end state look like for me? There's this repetitive task. What do I want to have it include? So then this is me considering this, and what I want it to know, I want it to check the weather that day. I want it to check my calendar for meetings to know whether I'm working from home or I have a board meeting, if I'm going to dinner. And then this is where it gets slightly more complicated and I want to challenge it. I want it to keep track of that. So then it knows what I've worn and knows what's in the laundry, right? This is my idealized state. So now we have, okay, this is what I want to do. Now, how do I achieve that? So I want to automate it. How do I actually make this happen? And this is where I actually ran this question by Elly, and I want to turn it over to her because I'm telling her, okay, this is my ideal world, and she's the workflow visualizer. And she just like was like, blah, 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 this is what you do. And I was like, oh my God, thank God I'm recording the call because I'm gonna have to go back and reread it. So how would you do this? And actually I found out Claude couldn't help me with this because Claude, if I hook up my drive to it, it's only looking at documents and
Yeah.
not photos. So you also had a solution for that. So what was your
Yeah, so the way I tend to think about these things is I tend to recognize patterns a lot. So I try to think like, what's the trigger, what's the input, what's the logic, what's the output. So first off, it was okay, you've got all your images in a Google Drive. Cool. So we'll use Wordsmith. Wordsmith can automatically sync with Google Drive, and it can also see images. So check, you've got your knowledge in the back of the brain of the AI. You've also got your prompt, so you know what you want to explain to the AI, you know the outcome that you want, the logic you want to give it, its job, its role, et cetera, the dependencies. So the next step would be, well, we want to be able to hook up to your calendar. We probably also want to know the weather. So a couple of ways we can do this, but the easiest way I would say is to probably use MCP. So Model Context Protocol. If you're unaware of what that is, it's essentially like the USB-C of AI. So think about your phone charger. It allows Wordsmith and applications like LLMs like Wordsmith to hook up to other applications in a very safe, secure way. And it allows you to take the data from that application into the AI and allow it to reason over it. So for Laura's example, what we were able to do is hook up to her Google Calendar, and we were able to give Wordsmith access, and we were able to tell it, okay, when you're making these judgments, when you're making these decisions on what outfits to wear, I want you to first look at my calendar. Then I also want you to look at, I'm not sure what you use in Denmark, but we use BBC Weather where I am in Edinburgh. So I would be asking, okay, second step, I want you to also look at the weather. What would be, I guess, appropriate for that day. And then finally, look at my closet, look at my images in my Google Drive. Finally, give your output, give your decision. So that's how I thought about it. So trigger, inputs, logic, output.
and one of my questions then, because I have you here and I haven't fully built it out yet. Um, I want it to remember.
Yes.
So memory is something that is very interesting depending on the tool that you're using. Is there some way that you can tell it to remember it, or am I asking too much, or is it something I have to play around with?
Yeah, so I would say it really depends. Like, for example, to go a little bit off topic, in your custom instructions, and let's talk about Wordsmith explicitly here. In your custom instructions, it's not necessarily always going to be able to remember everything. What it's really, really good at is following patterns, so following logic. In that, if you wanted to, I don't know, in Slack, tag somebody at the bottom of an Ask Legal question based on the days of the week, it's going to be really good at that because it understands the day, the next day, and who to tag. But what you can do and what we're seeing across multiple LLMs, and we've actually put in place in Wordsmith, is the ability to save memories to that specific agent. So what you're able to do is save it that way. Maybe you come up with an idea of, I always want to wear these trousers on a Monday. You can save it that way. I think we're moving towards the ability for these agents to be able to save memory automatically, but we're just not at that point yet.
That makes sense. And so I know, like in ChatGPT, it has memory. You can tell it to remember, but it will also remember random things. Claude
Yeah,
also has that. But I also learned the hard way, like you mentioned, just because it's in my memory, it doesn't go and check the memory before it answers it. It will pull it in for context sometimes,
yeah,
but not all the time. And so my example is like ChatGPT knows my kids' names, and I was being lazy and asked to write a response from Santa, and I didn't give it my kids' names because I was like, oh, it's in the memory. And then it just put some random kids' names in there. And I was like, what the hell, ChatGPT? And then I asked ChatGPT, like, what are you doing? And it said, oh, it's not like checking memories as a source of truth, before doing anything. It will bring it in, and for whatever reason, it just decided to put in Oliver as a name. And
Not a
so
bad
the
name.
yeah, that is one of the, I think one of the challenges, right, that we're at is this memory piece, and how do we put that into it? And I think what you said there is, okay, maybe I need to think about, rather than being lazy,
Yeah.
think about like standardizing it in some way,
Yeah.
so then the AI can remember that. Cool. So the reason that I just bring that up, I always like to start very small, basic, simple, where everyone understands. So we're all on the same page. And so I know this might be new to some people. Some other people might be like, I'm way beyond this. We will continue moving and learning. So this was really just to show you, exploring, we were exploring, testing, recognizing that pattern of behavior that is automatic for Ellie. Knowing what your end state is before you go in. Like, have you worked with people before, Ellie, that like didn't know what they wanted at the end? Can you even automate something if you don't know what the end goal is?
Yeah, so I would say that this is probably one of the biggest, I don't want to call it a mistake, right? It's just lack of experience when it comes to building these kind of flows. So, like, it really just comes down to nailing down how you think about things. Like, ultimately, you should be able to map your design out and know your end state before you go and actually engineer it. So, again, it goes back to your trigger. So, like, what actually starts this entire flow in the first place? The input. So, like, what is the information needed, the logic, so the if then rules, and then the output, what is ultimately going to happen as a result of all those steps that you defined beforehand. And I think it's really important to, in legal engineering, obviously, and I'm jumping ahead of myself here, but involve all of your stakeholders. Like, make sure that you understand that output completely. You can describe it to a 5-year-old, to your 95-year-old grandmother. That's the part where I see people, they jump to automation because it's super exciting. It can be really sexy looking, but you need to ultimately understand your outcome and what you need to achieve and then work your way back.
That's that. And so, and yeah, and that clothing situation, right? Like I had those variables that I wanted, and I knew
Yeah,
this is what I want you to look at. And then my end state is obviously an outfit. So that's very easy to understand.
exactly.
Now, one thing I want to be clear of, I always say this in every one of my presentations, but we don't think that AI is going to replace lawyers or legal teams, but it is going to change how legal work is done, and that is what we are focused on here today. Um, One of the inspirations, really, Ellie probably was the inspiration for this, but I was thinking about, people like buzzwords, but what is the, 2026 legal skill? And I really think it's going to be building workflows. We'll see if I'm right or not. So just to orient everyone, the first session was on legal prompting. So that's how do you write the instructions that we'll be talking about today. So how do you tell AI and convey what you want to get it to do what you want? Then we did how do we think about workflows? And so this is definitely more for, lawyers who are getting into workflows and trying to understand legal ops a little bit better. And then we're here today about building workflows. So actually doing examples, best practices, and red flags. And we will not do any more fashion. We'll be moving into legal. I want to do brief introductions so everyone knows who we are. I am Laura Jeffords Greenberg. I'm head of the Wordsmith Academy. I'm a California licensed attorney living in Denmark. I need to update this, but 13 of the last 16 years I have been in-house. So I identify as an in-house lawyer, and I've been teaching AI since 2023.
Yeah, over to me. So I'm Ellie. I am a legal engineer here at Wordsmith. A lot of people know this, but previous to this, I actually was a customer. So I bought and implemented Wordsmith when I was working in-house as legal operations manager. I have a UK law degree, but I chose never to actually qualify as a solicitor. I chose to go down the legal operations routes for many reasons that I am not going to bore you with today. But I have worked with, I would say, yeah, probably 50 plus legal teams to improve their legal ops function. And this is done using Wordsmith. I do build things for fun. I post a lot about it on LinkedIn and Substack. And yeah, I would say my specialism is probably, I guess my interest is more around these workflows, building things out with MCP, Zapier, making all of your tools talk and work together.
Awesome. So what are we going to do today? The objectives are how can we recognize legal work as repetitive workflows? learn how to design legal judgment into workflows and understand where and how AI adds leverage. As a reminder, everyone joined through the Academy after this. If you go back to the event page, the slide deck will be there and the recording will be there probably tomorrow because I am the one that has to do that. Um, so I will upload that tomorrow, but they will definitely be there. Briefly, last week we talked about workflow building overview. So the foundation there is I thought about, and I don't know how Ellie thinks about this, but I thought about legal work in two different flows. So one is the legal requests coming in from the business, and the second is the legal risks identified by legal. And then talked about how you can control both of those. Again, you can go back and watch that. I'm not going to go over to it, but go over it, but looking at how do you figure out what your legal work is, how are we designing judgment into those processes, and then how do we scale it? Like once we've created the workflow, how do we make sure that we scale it? And then how do we evolve? And when we're looking at designing workflows, really we're focusing on, and Ellie was mentioning this, right? What's the trigger? What triggers the workflow? What action? What are the inputs that you need? What's the information that you need? Where are the judgment rules? So this is encoding um, legal judgment. And this is where sometimes lawyers can get very uncomfortable and push back because they don't want to set a default position or make things binary, but we need that. Then what is the output, right? What is that ideal state of output that you're getting? And then do you have escalation? So, does the business just get to run with something, or when does the business need to go to legal? So those are some of the pieces and components of building out these workflows. And today we're going to look at three different examples. I'm going to do one really in depth that's simple, and then Ellie and I will talk about more complex ones. And then if you want to go deep dive into hers, there will be videos on the Academy that show you step by step how to do it exactly. But today we're talking more about thinking about how to build them than actually doing that, but we have that for you. So first we're going to start with a low value contract analyzer. So this is something that we've seen almost on every single legal team where what do you do with those low value contracts? I had a general counsel that called them bowling agreements. You know, the team is going to do a team building activity and I don't know, they're going roller skating, right? Like, do you want your legal team looking at that? Probably not. Also like cleaning agreements. At Unity, we had agreements for people to come in and like wash and trim the plants. Like, does legal need to spend time on those? Probably not. And depending on your business, some people had value. They'd cap it at, I'm not looking at anything under 10,000 euros, depending on your business. I'm not looking at anything under 50,000 euros, or different components.
Yeah.
So,
I would even, so sorry to jump in. I would even
but
say, like, one of the examples that I see, so I work really closely with customers, and probably the biggest example that I would see here are NDAs. A general counsel I used to work for, is my favorite phrase, used to call NDAs nothing burgers, because that's Laura's laughing. That's how he saw them internally in the business and just the business that we were in. And yeah, I've worked with, and again, this varies company to company, but I worked with several businesses at this point where the legal team just does not review them. They don't need to. They have implemented, and I'm sure we'll go into this, Wordsmith to the capacity where either with their CLM or just Wordsmith on its own, where they are pretty much hands off on NDA. So to Laura's point, like it ultimately depends on the contract you want to use here. You don't have to be completely hands off, but it's definitely possible to automate this.
yeah, NDAs, every job I've been in, I've automated those.
Nothing burgers. Exactly.
I mean, there are few, depending on what
Of
type of work you
course.
do, that have to, but you can work that into that, right? Again, you have clear
Definitely.
rules, escalate, only three types. That's what we had
Yeah.
at one of my companies. There were only three types of NDAs that got escalated to legal. Everything else, don't
Yeah.
want to.
Exactly. Criteria. All
Yeah,
doable. Yeah.
exactly. So I'm making this super simple. So what is the trigger here for the low value contract analyzer? Because we're going to do this in Wordsmith. We upload a contract for review. So that's a very simple trigger. It's an action. What does this look like? I'm going to go to Wordsmith. I'm going to select a repository, which is the low value contract analyzer. You can see it here. It has custom instructions. And this is where I prompted it to tell it what I want it to do when I upload the agreement here. And then I just hit review. Wordsmith loves to open that side. I don't. And then it's going to go through and review the agreement. So what are the inputs that it's looking for? This comes from the custom instructions. I have, this is a very detailed, but I have the full prompt of the custom instructions at the end. So you can also try this out and use it for yourself. But these are the inputs that we're looking for. The contract document, which is the trigger. And then we're looking at the contract type, parties, services, fees, and payment. You can change this to whatever you want that works for you. Then it's going to read it and see, it's going to pull out those inputs. Then next, it's going to have judgment rules. So this is where it's encoding the judgment. How are you handling the NDAs, or how are you handling the low value agreements here? There are actually going to be 2 gates. So you can again make this 1 gate. You can make it 5 gates, as simple or as complex as you want. And actually, Ellie, that's a good question. Like, if you do you have any suggestions about, like, how many steps? So here they're doing 2 checks. One is the
Yeah.
contract type, and then the second one, and I'll go into it again, is minimum requirements checklist. So it's checking the agreement for certain things. And it either passes or fails each of those. And to pass, so legal doesn't have to look at it, it has to pass both of those.
Yeah. And sorry, what was the question on it? It just, do you think that's enough?
Like this has, like, we have 2 gates.
Yeah.
Is there, like, have you had situations, because I'm just like literally thinking of this right now, like, lawyers sometimes love to be like, you know what, this is the worst problem that I have, and I want you to solve my most complex, terrible thing right
Yeah.
now before starting with like the easiest.
Yeah.
So what happens if I had like 7 different things that it would check for? Is that possible, or is it better to really just narrow it down? Like, what, because
Yeah. No, no, it's a good question. So I would say, look, even with humans, like the fewer the better, right? Always. But if you do have multiple, and I like to call them paths, I think Zapier calls them paths when you have like multiple pieces of logic. So like conditional ruling, if this, then that kind of rules, if X, then Y. AI works really, really well with explicit instructions. So if you had those 7 different gateways, as you called it, as long as you are explicitly clear on what it is and the criteria that has to be met for it to pass or fail, again, over those 7 different types, it is totally doable. Again, to caveat that with, you're always going to get better results if it's just X or Y. But if you have multiple, just try to be super clear. Like the way that I always explain it to people is, if I was a new joiner in your team tomorrow and I had to do this task for you, how could you explain it to me logically so that I could do a gold star job? Like I could do the best possible outcome and always get this correct. And I find this is where a lot of people fall down, because they realize that it's all in their head, as in they have these clear rules that they don't consciously think about. They just do it, and they just, like, I've had a lot of people say to me, well, I just know. But you do reason, like in your brain, you do go through step-by-step criteria, whether or not you realize it. So getting comfortable with writing these out and clearly defining that logic, or gates as you call it, I think is a really good step. But to answer your original question, yes, it's always going to work better with fewer. But if you have multiple, just being explicitly clear with steps and logic, it's absolutely doable.
Awesome, thank you. So here, I think we did that because it does tend to work fairly well. So the first, yeah, I guess gate, or path, we
Mhm.
could call it either way. It's simply checking, is the agreement one of these 4? If not, it fails. So if it's one of these, yes, it passes. If not, it fails.
Yeah.
Do you think like AI can check for these? Do I need to provide any other information? Could this confuse it?
So again, this is getting a bit into the weeds. I
Yeah.
think like if it was super clear from your documentation, so let's say in every contract that you had, the very first line specified this is a office supplies agreement, this is a hospitality agreement. Of course it's going to be able to define it, no problem. It's going to need some sort of indicator though. Like, again, back to the, if I was joining the team tomorrow, if I were to look at this agreement and compare it to one of these four choices, would I clearly be able to distinguish and decide which bucket it falls into? If that is clear to a human, great. If it's not, then it's going to fall down.
And so this might be, because we're uploading vendor agreements, this might be somewhere we want to clarify that. And that
Yeah.
sort of reminds me when we've written custom instructions before, again, getting third-party agreements, clarifying like what a customer or a client or a company, right? All the possible sort of potential placeholders, that those are all the one sort of one and the same, right? Or
Nuances, yeah,
yeah,
any nuances. And again, this is a great way in your custom instructions. If I were to write this out right now, like what you've written out is fantastic. And maybe at the very, very bottom, you could have some caveats, some nuances to just explain to the AI again, like a human, that here are some little tips and tricks or ways that you could negate it from falling down.
that's great. Thank you. And then so the second gate that we have, because it has to have two passes, right? Is a minimum requirements checklist. I'm struggling today.
Yeah, it's the end
Um,
of the day.
it's the end of the day. It's the third presentation. I've been talking way too long. Um, this is just, again, for, you can go back and look at this. I hate slides with lots of text, but this is where we're being much more specific. So here, if any single item is missing or unclear, it fails. And here, again, we might want to give a little bit more information, but if we were working in Wordsmith, it's going to actually probably really know all of these really, really well. And when we've tested it before, it seemed to work. So those are the judgment rules. If both of those pass, then it doesn't go to legal. If either of those fail, then it has to go to legal. And so here's the example of it thinking. We've already uploaded it, it's going, and it gives us a key overview of the agreement. And then you can see part one and two, there's part, they both failed. And then it's explaining why. So you can see the details, all these things failed. Um, and that we did that on purpose. We wanted to test all the different things, and it actually is catching all of those nuances of why it failed. And here, right, the judgment rules are being applied, and this is the actual output that we wanted. So we either wanted both of those passed, it's a low risk, approved to sign. You actually will see go ahead and organize the agreement to be signed. It does not require legal review. Here you could also then incorporate other documentation, maybe your, who your signatories are. If you have delegation of authority, you can incorporate that into the custom instructions as well. If it fails, then your agreement will require review from legal. We expect the review to be completed within blank weeks. And this also in the background then is actually operating in Slack and tagging other people. We're just showing you how it works in Wordsmith. So again, this is the core of it. And then we can start adding in and connecting other pieces, which Elly is really good at. And so here you can see it said it failed. And it made up 2 to 3 weeks. Again, you could upload your document of your SLAs. Depending on the document type, it would fill in whatever these weeks are, and then would tag someone so then legal knows that they have to do something.
Yeah. So to give you, I like giving concrete examples of like what we're seeing with other customers internally. I have two that come to mind automatically. One, they don't mind me talking about, they're an employer of record company and they would use this for marketing pieces. So if, for example, the marketing team had a blog going out and they wanted to post it next month, they have this something like this, like a traffic light system enabled in Slack that allows the marketing team to come in, they drop in their blog post, and Wordsmith will review it again, like the custom instructions that Laura had in, based on the criteria that they have set out. If it passes, great, go ahead, no edits needed. You can post this, you've got legal's approval. If not, they're able to actually tell you exactly what lines need to be changed, what needs to be done for you then to pass it back through. And if they, meet some sort of criteria and they say something awful and they like defame the company, then someone from legal will be tagged and they've explicitly set out who those people are. Another company I can think of comes to mind that I work with is a sole GC. And again, he has this implemented for NDAs. So yes, you can go ahead, you can sign this. No, legal need to have a look at this, and it saved him a lot of time.
Yeah, it can save so much time. And again, here we actually have the custom instructions. You're not meant to look at it now, but you can reference it later. You'll have the PDF you can copy and paste, and then play around with it. And the knowledge that we uploaded into our repository was the contracting playbook or guidelines. So then that's what it's building off of. Again, you could put in delegation of authority. You can put in a lot of other information that you can ask it to extract from to make this more robust so then legal doesn't have to touch very much. Some of when you're setting up these processes, just a couple red flags to look for, right? And no clear trigger. Like clearly something has to happen to kick off the workflow. And it needs to be very clear what that is. As we sort of touched on, right, maybe low risk is defined vaguely. So make sure you're defining and very clear with your language so that the AI can operate how you want. Make sure that the judgment criteria is binary, right? And this is again where sometimes lawyers feel uncomfortable because we can't answer it depends. You have to force it one way or another. And make sure that the rules are encoded. So we're writing those rules down and we can't make inferences. Again, as Elly said, right? Someone brand new and junior just joined. We need to get whatever's in our head out onto the paper and make sure that there's always an escalation path, right? If they're a path, we know that there's always going to be exceptions. So how are you dealing with those or something that's an edge case? Just make sure that you can deal with those. So now I know we're a little bit at halftime, so I will just stop right here and see if we have any questions before we move forward. If anyone has any questions about anything, you can please drop it in the chat or you can come off of mute and ask us as well. We want to make sure that this is valuable to you, so we don't just want to talk at you the whole time.
Yeah, and I guess I would just love to know, like, does that all make sense so far? Like, is there anything in that that maybe needs clarification? It's not clear. You disagree on? That would also be super interesting.
We
Thank you,
haven't,
Carrie.
yes, we haven't all clear. Good. And again, please interrupt, write questions. Again, we like to be interactive. We
I
talked,
have a quick question.
yeah,
Just on in terms of when you're building these prompts, and apologies, I didn't go to the prompt training, so maybe you covered that already. But are you kind of building off a bank that you already have, or creating bespoke things every time and using AI to iterate it? Do you kind of have stock phrases that you're pulling into each one?
do you want to go first?
Yeah, I absolutely can. So I would say it's an element of both. I would say that I do have stock phrases and they might be what you think in the sense of I have found that like threatening the AI always works really, really well. I always apologize to it after, but it
With
does
what?
help. Like in capital letters, always do this. If you do not, you will be penalized. Like again, let's go back to
Okay.
Laura's example and say she had 7 different pathways that she could go down. And sometimes, again, AI can get a little bit confused, and that's fine. That's to be expected. But if you were to back that up with some penalization, and you should always do this, it tends to respond a bit better. And what we find and Laura often talks about is LLMs were trained on Reddit. So it understands all caps. Yeah, exactly. Caps, penalties. So it knows that you're shouting at it. So I would say those types of things I tend to bank and take with me. Similarly, Markdown. If I am integrating an AI agent into Slack, then I will use Markdown to maybe bold some titles and to make it look a little bit prettier. But in terms of the actual prompting, there's multiple ways that I do this. I have gotten a little bit lazy, I'm not going to lie. And what I tend to do is I will explain to AI, I will tell it that you are a AI engineer and I am trying to write a prompt to do X. And I have gotten really into dictation for whatever reason. And I just spew my brain out on what I'm trying to achieve to the AI. I then tell it to craft the prompt for me. I'll refine it. I'll probably make it a lot shorter, but I essentially get it to make it for me. And then the other thing that we have in Wordsmith is the prompt generator itself, which will actually also do that for you without you having to ask. But answer your question, I've gotten very lazy. I do take banks of things with me, but ultimately I will get the AI to write its prompt for itself.
Yeah,
I've
I'm
been doing the same. It's good to hear.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that makes me feel better. It doesn't make me feel as bad, but it's efficient, right? I always like work smarter, not harder. Again, there will be little things that I do push in here and there. Like again, I might, depend on what model's being used, you might want to move a few phrases to the very bottom. Like sometimes it can be the final thing that the AI sees. So if you are trying to tell it something really, really explicit, like if the question is ever on maternity leave in Germany, then I want you to flag it to Emily in the people team. You might want to put that at the very bottom or at the very top or both, depending on the outcome, because it can be the first and the last thing that the AI sees. So little things like that and little tweaks. I'm sure Laura covered all of this in her prompting course, so I would definitely go look at that. But that's what I take with me more so than actual crafting of it myself.
And that's I didn't do the bottom one. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I did ask actually for the low value contract analyzer. I worked with Michael, one of our legal engineers, and I asked him because I noticed that he looking at other people's prompts is also really interesting, or sharing prompts with people.
Yeah.
I noticed repetition, and so I said, "Did you do that on purpose?" And he's like, "I've noticed that it does kind of help." So as you're saying, if you said the thing about Emily and maternity leave
Mm.
up above and then repeat it at the end,
Yeah.
that again is signaling to it, just like a human. Like if we're talking and I
Mm.
repeat something, that means it's important.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
It's emphasis, right? And again, it's back to how we think as humans. And yes, you've got to tune that a little bit, but the foundations are still true. Again, the other thing that I tend to do is steps. I will always use steps. The first thing that I'll say to AI is let's take this step by step. Step one is maybe the triage. So how do we think about triage in it? Step two, and again, that's those pathways. But telling it that it's about to anticipate steps and then lay out said steps tends to help it break it down a little bit easier and not miss anything either.
definitely. And there is a question. It says, is there a list of examples of actual workflows? Ellie mentioned NDAs and marketing blogs. It would be great to hear or see some others.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're going to go into two more, but what I can actually do, Claire, is, and this is a little bit of self-promotion, and I apologize, but I have a list of workflows. I'm quite a visual person, so I love a Figma and I also love a video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drop that into the chat and you can take a look at those as you please, and we can have a chat about any of those that you find interesting. So I'm just going to drop that your way
And
now.
we also, at the academy, we have a customer section or use case section,
Yeah.
and that's where Ellie has shared a lot of her workflow videos. So what we try to do is have a video that's 10, like between 5 and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's one specific workflow. So for example, this self-serve enablement, we'll be posting this on the academy. So we're not going to go into the details, but I'll just quickly, oops, hold on, bring up, this is a clip from the video where Ellie's explaining how she's doing self-serve enablement with Monday.com, and this is Zapier. So I'll actually, do you want to just talk about this example really quick? Like
Yeah.
what did the customer want, and then how you thought about it and put it together. And then again, if you want to see the details of it, there will be a video.
Yeah, nitty gritty details.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to give you a bit of background on this one, this was actually a really exciting one for me to work on. I do love a challenge. We have a feature called blueprints. And blueprints, I would think about them as really intelligent templates. So it's not a find and replace, but you can add conditional logic to these templates and allow AI to fill it out. So let me give you an example. Something like an employment agreement. Maybe you have specific templates like that have repetitive fields, so things that you would be doing over and over again, and the outputs rarely change. You fill in the same fields. So again, employment agreements, what do you change? You change the employee's name, where they're working from, their salary, maybe their stock options, things like that, their tax. So what we are able to do is upload that kind of document into Wordsmith, create a blueprint, and we give AI some instructions. So how do you want it to think about filling out this template? So again, maybe when you input its country of residence, then that will trigger the tax location at the very bottom of the document. So you can really, really speak to these and make them flow really, really well. So that's a little bit of background, but what the customer wanted was they were using blueprints again for NDAs, but instead of doing this in Slack, they wanted the business to be able to self-serve on them in their project management tool or their ticketing system called Monday.com. So because they had Zapier, and Zapier is a workflow tool, I use it probably almost every single day, and that's where I talk to the trigger, input, logic, outcome kind of framework. And if you have a tool like Zapier, you are able to connect Wordsmith with over 8,000 different applications. So you can imagine, I don't want to do the math there. I'm also not very good at it. That gives you an awful lot of outcomes and things that you can build. So what we were able to do is the trigger was going to be a new item on board. So what actually happens here? A business user comes in and they fill out a form on Monday.com. So legal has specified a form with, let's just say, 6 or 7 questions, and those questions match and map up to the blueprint that legal has specified on Wordsmith. So questions like, what is the NDA, the person who's going to be signing the NDA, what's their name, what's the country, what's the purpose of the NDA? Those will all be the same questions. And Laura, I think you've just come out of yeah, there we go. So they'll all be the same questions and they will match up. So once that ticket is submitted, that becomes, again, a ticket on legal's board. And what we're able to do is send that ticket to Wordsmith. Wordsmith will then generate the blueprint and it will send it back to Monday.com, and it will live on the board and notify legal and the user that that blueprint has been completed, and they can go about their day, go about their business. And what that does for legal is it allows the business to self-serve, knowing that it's completely safe and secure, because the business cannot change and like elements other than what legal has actually specified and set out for them to change. So you can see what Laura has here. So again, this is what is similar to what the user would have seen in the form that they would have filled out on Monday.com. But this is where Wordsmith will take that input and actually input it into its blueprint. So for example, customer name, effective date, provider registered address. It'll input all that information and then it'll complete the blueprint and send it back to the user on Monday.com.
Perfect. So we'll pause there too and see if anyone has
Yeah.
additional questions on that, or just additional questions in general. No? All right, then I will.
Yeah, keep going. So the other thing that I would say on that, like again, it's hard when you're in it to come up with use cases, but other things I've seen that are similar to this would be the likes of contract review. So again, we obviously natively integrate with Slack, but if a user was using Monday.com as their ticketing system again, maybe they want to complete their contract review from the project management tool as well. Again, that's all doable and it would be the exact same workflow. No questions, just looking at your workflows. Thank you for sharing. You're very welcome. If you have any questions on those, just let me know. But yeah, possibilities pretty much endless. Smiley face. Great.
There are definitely endless possibilities. And I think that's what's exciting for both of us. Now,
Yeah.
we have like these individual workflows, but then I was trying to think, this is really just selfishly for teaching. One example that would take you through all the different use cases of Wordsmith. And then I thought, oh, we're making workflows for like individual, but then also you need workflows for creating like new standards and templates as well. So one of the cool things, and this is where knowing your tool and what it can do is really important. So I can do all of this in Wordsmith. So I have, the example is I have my Wordsmith MSA, taking from a different startup I've been at. Ross goes crazy and he decides, I'm also going to do a startup for AI for dogs. And I use this example, I don't have it here, but simply so I can use a picture of my dog in VR. goggles. So he's like, we need a new MSA for that because I'm going to start selling AI for dogs. So, okay, I'm not going to draft anything from scratch. I have our Wordsmith MSA. I'm going to use the chat, and this could be chat in any AI tool, to redraft an AI for Dogs MSA. There's only a couple things that I really need to change. Everything else is going to stay the same. We're going to make it a SaaS subscription agreement as well. So I do that in the chat. And then we talked about blueprints earlier, and that's basically a template. So now I'm going to create a template for our MSA. And this is, I'm going to surface this to the business user, right? The business in this example goes to monday.com. It sends it to the blueprint at Wordsmith, and then they get an MSA back. Cool. So we've done that. I've taken a lot of work off our plate. Maybe you hook it up to Salesforce, whatever. Um, Now that I have our template, I need to create a playbook. So I need to have our fallback positions for when we're negotiating. I need to create red lines. I need to review red lines when people mark up our MSA and then respond to those. So that's where then I'm going to create a playbook in Wordsmith. And then when we get red lines coming in, I'm going to run a review on that playbook. And here, you could potentially surface that to the business, but I'm going to say, with exercising caution, this is really only output for legal, the playbook and review, and then legal will review the output of Wordsmith and then send it back to the business. Then it gets saved, and we can save all of our MSAs in a repository. Here, you can actually make the repository available to the business. So the business could maybe look at termination dates or when contracts are coming up for renewal. And all they have to do is go to the repository in whatever way they can access it and just say, like, hey, when is customer access contract up for renewal? So you don't really need complicated contract management system. And then you can run reports on all of that data. And this again could be for the legal team. Um, Maybe I want an analysis of all the limitation to liability clauses because I need to have a meeting, with our CFO and CEO, and we kind of have to present that to the board. Or maybe I need to run an analysis of what are the most frequently changed or negotiated clauses to then help me figure out how to improve my MSA so I don't have as much negotiation. Or maybe the business wants to run an analysis of the agreements about something that has no interest to me. Then they can also do that there. So there really are endless possibilities about how you can use different tools.
Yeah, 100%. Like I'll even give you another example that I actually built again when I was in a customer was running that report. So let's say it's all your third party vendor agreements. And we had a huge problem internally with tooling, as I'm sure everybody does. Everybody tends to grow rogue, and there could be 5 project management tools internally. Like you could have Asana, Monday.com, Jira, everything. What I found helpful was running an analysis of all your third party vendor tools, then uploading that to a repository. So creating an agent and exposing that to the business and making that a step in your procurement process. So maybe it was a case of the business user had to come into Slack, they had to declare, I want to buy Jira as a project management tool. Do we already have a project management tool? And then Wordsmith would be able to come back and say, hey, Tom, no, sorry, we use Asana internally. You cannot buy that tool unless you have specific justification. If you do, then please move on to step 2, and that would be all within your workflow, which we won't get into today. But again, we've implemented that with a couple of customers internally, and it's gone down really well, which is good. A lot of less duplicate tools, a lot of budget saved, so that was good.
Oh my, yeah, you're talking about so many pain points that I've had
Yeah,
at different companies
I
I've
know.
been at.
This is the thing, right? Like it's almost like a bit of a therapy session. Like
Yeah.
everybody tends to have the same, like you do hear the same problems, just maybe dressed up differently, but ultimately most of us operate the same way. You might have some way out there use cases, but like most of the time these are pretty repetitive.
The same problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some questions just to ask before you automate, like in thinking through this is, does this happen often? So yeah, earlier today, even in our AI office hours, there's a business that everything is kind of bespoke. So that would actually be really interesting is looking at what pieces of your workflow can you automate when you have a lot of bespoke work going on. So, does this happen often? Do we decide the same way each time? And this is where AI can be extremely powerful. So I'm sure other people have had the experience of like, it just depends what lawyer you got to work on the agreement as to how things were decided. I mean, everyone has great intentions of having a rule book, um, but definitely at companies, it was up to whatever lawyer was handling that agreement for the decisions that what they made. Now we can standardize that. So one of our customers also created a contract negotiator that they exposed to the sales team. And so when the sales team would come back with markups to their MSA, they'd upload it and they'd give them a summary of the changes, an internal explanation of the changes, but then they would say, this is what you need to say to the customer. So then all the salespeople had the same consistent message going back to the customer. And then hopefully the salespeople also maybe were getting educated at the same time if they read the internal explanation. At least the team was trying to do that. So I think that's a great way. Automating can also reduce risk and make sure that you are consistent. Can you explain the rule? That's super important. Why are we making this decision? And then do we know when to escalate? Like when does this have to go to legal? When doesn't it? And I think a lot of this is, about getting work off of legal's desks so then legal can work on the right things and also empowering the business, right? I don't want to be a bottleneck. I don't want to look at NDAs. I don't want to hold you up. How can I make it easier for you to do your job so then I can really work on the things that are important? So I'll pause again here. I know we have about 7 minutes left and see if there are any questions. While we're waiting to see if there are questions, um, bribery always works. If you want to, learn more and see use cases and see how other customers, we're sharing a lot of how other customers are using Wordsmith. Then follow us on LinkedIn. And if you give us a shout out or tell us how fabulous that Elly and I were and that we were very helpful today. Or alternatively, you could give us constructive criticism and feedback as well. We'll take that. But if you
Yeah.
do give us a shout out, especially if you tag me in the next 2 days, I'm in charge of a liability cap list that we send out to people. So if you'd like a liability cap, um, you know, we will take the form of giving us some love on social media. And if you would like to connect with both of us, there's our email and also LinkedIn. And then you have Elly's Substack on there. It's amazing how she visualizes workflows. So I would definitely go look at that for inspiration. And since there's about 5 minutes left, we will stay and see if anyone has any additional questions.
Me again. When you're building these workflows and you're kind of creating the ideas for it, I could see the way you've kind of plotted it out in diagrammatic form. It's definitely how I approach it as well. How involved do you get the stakeholders in that part? Is that just something you're doing internally, or would you have the conversation and say, is that what you're doing? Is that what the output you want is?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say I involve them from the start and I really try to get to the nitty-gritty of what is the problem. Because I often find that what people think is the problem versus what the problem actually is are two completely different things. What I've also found from experience and something I really do take with me is that again, I'm not a lawyer, but what I found is unless they can explain it to me, again, like I'm a 5-year old and I have no problem being explained to like that, then they don't understand the process or the problem at hand. And again, until they can do that, then we don't move forward. So I involve them from the start and make sure that we're completely aligned on this is the issue, this is the outcome I'd love. Then I also ask what's their ideal outcome in a perfect world, what would happen? And of course, they would like to not have to do the job at all, but that I unfortunately cannot achieve. But yeah, what would your ideal outcome be? And from there, then I kind of go away, reverse engineer it, work my way back, build the workflow. I'll then present it to them. triple make sure this is what they're signing up for and they're all happy with it. And then I go through with implementing it and yeah, phase rollout kind of idea.
That's really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I think that is an excellent point. Unless you, there are definitely people on the legal team who have the ability that Ellie does, or who really understand technology, um, that come up with a solution, right? Those are rare, and most people will struggle. They think they might want something, but really, when you dig into it, it's something else. I mean, that's the same when the business comes to legal and is like, I need a partnership agreement. And is like, is that really what you need? Can you tell me what you're doing? And it turns out, right, to not be that at all. It's sort of the same exercise, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I would say that's largely a part of like either legal operations or legal engineering. It's really to just get to the foundation of what is going on. Because otherwise, like if this isn't the problem you're actually trying to solve, it ultimately falls down and it's on your head, which is unfortunate. But again, yeah, I would say that's a really, really key skill and something you only have to learn once is that you need to make sure that everybody understands the problem is actually the problem.
Excellent. All right, 2 minutes left. So you have one more question. We can squeeze in one more question if anyone
Yeah.
has that. I've also dropped in our Wordsmith LinkedIn page as well in the chat.
Good.
Have to do the last bit of promotion here.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And Laura, is this your last
This is my last
webinar?
webinar. Yes,
This is
this is
your
my
last webinar. So big round of applause for Laura, who has been our head of academy. We're going to be very, very sad to lose her, but she's got a phenomenal opportunity awaiting her. So just it's been a pleasure, obviously, doing these with you. And yeah, we're gonna miss you.
Oh, thank you. I will miss you too, but I will not be a stranger. So that's
No,
good.
exactly. Exactly, you won't. Okay, cool. If
Perfect.
nobody has any questions, then we will let you all have a minute back, I guess.
Woohoo.
I know. See, we're efficient, guys. We're very, very efficient. Okay, cool. Everybody have a great day and thank you so much for tuning
Yes.
in.